Good afternoon. MPPs are set to make history as they return to Queen's Park today.
They will choose the first female speaker in the history of Ontario's legislature. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris joins us live with the details. Siobhan.
Well, it's something that hasn't happened in the 158 years of the history of this province, and that changes today with the election of a speaker. That election is the first order of business as Queen's Park wakes up. MPPs are returning after a long break. In the interim, there's been a trade war, a provincial election. So with the regular order starts to return with the election of the speaker, that happens an hour from now. In the running are NDP MPP Jennifer French. She's a former educator, and she talked to us about hearing school kids visiting Queen's Park, noting that none of the speaker's portraits are of women. She's up against PC MPP Donna Skelly, someone who's experienced working through barriers of sexism, starting in broadcast journalism when women were told they weren't authoritative enough to anchor alone. She wants to bring the legislature on the road.
I want to bring the chamber somehow to northern and remote parts of Ontario. There is a huge disconnect. I felt it when I grew up in northern Ontario, just outside of Sudbury, a little town called Capreol.
When I have spoken to MPPs from all parties about their vision for this next 44th Parliament, I'd say that there is a want to do better, a bit of a unifying interest with all of them, and so I think I'd like to be a part of that.
We've heard from leaders this morning of the NDP and the Greens talking about the need to take a collaborative approach when it comes to tackling tariffs, but they also say that they will be keeping the government in check. We know that they're looking to speed up some approvals to get building a response, the government says, to those tariffs. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Siobhan. Well, it's set to be another roller coaster week for investors, with the Trump administration expected to announce its decision on whether to impose tariffs on semiconductors. On Friday, tariff exemptions were announced on some electronic devices like smartphones and computers. However, the relief may be short-lived. The U.S. president has suggested the tariff exemptions are temporary. This comes as the White House is deciding whether to impose tariffs on semiconductors, a critical component in electronic devices. For more, we're joined live by CTV's Scott Hurst. Scott, it's hard to follow the puck on this one. Why don't you bring us up to speed?
Michelle, good afternoon. The Trump administration is downplaying the possible exemptions, once again touting that no country will be off the hook from these tariffs as the Trump administration targets dozens of trading partners around the world, most specifically against China. And of course, this is a high-stakes showdown between the two world's largest economies. And so we've seen this back and forth. We've seen the retaliation escalate, yet no word at this point that the two leaders have any plans to speak amidst this ongoing trade war. So late last week, of course, we got that word that some exemptions for smartphones and computers, but it appears that exemption or reprieve from tariffs on these popular consumer electronics may be short-lived, as Trump is threatening these punishing tariffs potentially on semiconductor chips. And that is, of course, a key component of these electronics, which could mean that this will send prices for the finished products higher as this ongoing trade war continues, Michelle.
Now it's another week. A lot of people were watching the markets very closely. It was quite something last week, and here we are into another week. How is trading going so far on the markets today?
The markets early on were up a couple hundred points, and so there were some significant green numbers on the backs of this potential reprieve from some of these popular consumer electronic items coming from China. The numbers have faded a bit. However, both the Dow Jones and the TSX are still in positive territory. Of course, unpredictability has really been the only constant in all of this, and that appears to be no indication that that'll change anytime soon as Donald Trump continues to dig in, insisting, despite the initial reaction we're seeing from the markets, insisting, as he puts it, what he's been doing so far is working, Michelle.
CTV's Scott Hurst live for us in the CTV National Newsroom. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
U.S. tariffs are a major focus at City Hall today as the mayor's executive committee meets.
This morning, the group outlined their response aimed at supporting businesses in the city. CTV's Natalie Johnson has been following this closely. She joins us live from City Hall with more. Natalie.
Hi, Michelle. That's right. City Council has already endorsed a plan to combat these U.S. tariffs through the municipal levers that are available to them. That includes prioritizing Canadian suppliers for City Hall contracts, promoting buy local, and allowing industry that is hard hit by the tariffs to defer their property taxes. Part of that, we know, is based on some new data, an assessment of local tariff impacts that really highlights the concerns that Toronto businesses are facing. According to a new survey, 75% of businesses expect rising costs due to tariffs, and 48%, nearly half of them, anticipate significant disruptions, including reduced demand and supply chain interruptions. The most impacted sectors of the local economy, according to this new data, are the auto parts makers supply chain, food and beverage manufacturers, and medical device and pharmaceutical manufacturing. Reduced cross-border flow of goods and people will also likely impact Toronto's role as a transportation and logistics hub as well. Here is more from the mayor this morning.
The City of Toronto is quickly moving forward to support local businesses and workers with 6 months property tax deferral. And we noticed today that the provincial government matched our plan with their own 6-month tax deferral. Leveraging our strong tech sector, the city is developing an artificial intelligence advisory table with the goal of scaling up the local AI and tech ecosystem, increasing our economic competitiveness, and making new connections between tech companies with businesses that could use their service.
This new data ultimately showing that Toronto businesses are bracing for the impacts of these tariffs, using mitigation measures like cash conservation and market diversification to avoid laying off workers, at least for now. Reporting live at City Hall, I'm Natalie Johnson. Nathan, over to you.
Thank you, Natalie. Still to come is debate week for federal party leaders. They're preparing to square off as they continue to push their message to potential voters. We'll have the latest from the campaign trail a little later in the newscast.
One person is dead. 2 other people are in hospital following a crash on the 401. It happened shortly after 10 a.m. in the westbound collector lanes at Meadowvale Road. Ontario Provincial Police say a single vehicle collided with a guardrail in the area. The driver was pronounced dead on scene. 2 passengers were taken to a local trauma center with serious injuries, and the cause of the crash is now under investigation.
A 31-year-old man's been charged in connection with a fiery crash on the 427 last night. It happened in the southbound lanes near Bloor around 7:30 last night. OPP say one person has been charged with impaired driving, dangerous driving, and stunt driving. His license has been suspended for 90 days, and his vehicle has been impounded for 2 weeks. No injuries were reported.
An Ontario family is asking for the public's help to find their son, who disappeared during a ski trip in Mont-Tremblant over 2 months ago. 22-year-old Liam Toman went missing around 3 a.m. on February 2nd after leaving a bar in the ski village north of Montreal. The Niagara College graduate was last seen on security camera walking back towards his hotel, but never went inside. Last month, his wallet was found outside Mont-Tremblant, not far from where he was last spotted. Quebec Provincial Police have conducted searches, but they have yet to find any trace of him. Now his family is asking anyone with information to come forward.
The temporary shutdown of General Motors' Cami plant in Ingersoll begins today. The facility will be closed for 3 weeks before briefly reopening in May for limited production. Operations will then be suspended until October. After that, there will just be a single shift at the plant for the foreseeable future. The union representing workers at the facility says that will result in the indefinite layoff of nearly 500 employees. GM says it's making the move because of lower than expected demand for its electric delivery vehicles and not because of U.S. tariffs. Ingersoll's mayor spoke about the impact.
It's going to have an effect on the larger region. A lot of these individuals drive from around Ingersoll, London, Woodstock, St. Thomas, all over the place. So it's not going to be Ingersoll, but we're certainly going to see it here. I know our grocery store, every time that facility closes, our grocery store takes a hit, and as well as the local businesses that rely on it.
GM also recently announced it was laying off about 200 workers at its all-electric facility in Detroit, saying the job cuts were made to align with market dynamics.
Blue Jays slugger Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is set to address the media today for the first time since signing that historic deal.
The 26-year-old has agreed to a 14-year extension with the Jays worth $500 million. CTV's Mike Walker has been following this story and joins us live now with more, and I'm sure Vladdy's very happy, Mike.
Vladdy, and of course Jays fans as well. This is a record-breaking contract for the Toronto Blue Jays that very likely will guarantee Vladdy will remain a Blue Jay for the rest of his career. And the image on the Jumbotron here inside Rogers Centre says it all. Home.
Here's a challenge system. Guerrero smokes one the other way.
It's the largest contract in Blue Jays history and one of the richest in Major League Baseball.
I'm a Blue Jay for life. For life.
Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and the Blue Jays return to Rogers Centre for the first time today after signing a $500 million contract extension.
I think it's a good deal. Good deal. Helps the team out, and I think he's worth it.
Relief for the club and its fans after the two sides failed to reach a deal at the start of spring training, with Vladdy telling the team then he would test free agency after this season.
I
mean, we never got to that point where I feel like I wanted to do the deal.
Now it appears the 26-year-old slugger is a Blue Jay for life. This massive 14-year extension begins next season.
Good for the city. It's good. It's a homegrown player staying in Toronto. You know, you don't want to lose your homegrown guys. And, you know, I know his bat's a little cold right now, but I'm sure it's going to warm up.
The Jays' first baseman is coming off one of his best seasons ever, winning a Silver Slugger award with 30 home runs.
He's just a good, excellent, pure hitter, you know, and I think he's good for the city, and there's not much to not like about him.
As a fan, it looks like the team's committed to putting money in the payroll.
The Blue Jays insist franchise players like Vladdy don't come along very often and have called the signing a monumental moment in the team's history. Now, Guerrero is the third MLB player to agree to a contract of $500 million or more, following behind the Mets' Juan Soto and the Dodgers' Shohei Ohtani. We'll be hearing from Vladdy at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Nathan, back to you.
All right, thanks, Mike. Well, a note for subway riders, there's an early closure on Line 2 to be aware of this week. Beginning today, service between Ossington and Jane stations will end nightly at 11. Shuttle buses will be running instead. Now, the early closure will be in place through Thursday. Runnymede, High Park, Lansdowne, and Dufferin stations will all be closed, but all other stations will remain open for customers to purchase fares and connect to bus routes.
Spring has sprung, but ski season is not over in Ontario just yet. Blue Mountain has reopened following a temporary closure after last month's ice storm knocked out power to the resort. Its final day of operation will be April 21st. The resort says it received more than 4 meters of snow this season, which is the most in the past decade. Blue Mountain says it will see 119 days with snow, which is in line with the average length of a full winter season.
We have more news in a moment, but first, here's a live look at the city this afternoon. No snow. We've got clouds, some sunshine as well, warm temperatures to start the work and school week. There's also a chance of showers, but overall, a good-looking day. Jessica Smith is here with a look at the current conditions. Hey, Jess.
Hey, after such a cool stretch and some snow last week, we get a bit of a break, at least for today. We have some sunshine on the way off and on throughout the afternoon, but we're keeping a close eye on the system making its way through northern Ontario that will eventually affect us again. We saw some showers really early on this morning. They're gone for now, but as the system sinks down and rotates counterclockwise, we'll see a little taste of rain and maybe even some wet snow as we head into the day tomorrow. But for now, we're looking at a fairly moderate southeasterly wind, but those winds pick up tonight and into the day tomorrow as that rain pushes its way into our area. But we were in the double digits for the most part, and it's a beautiful start to the work and school week. A little sunnier towards the island, a little more cloud cover through Pearson, but regardless, we're holding on at a very seasonal point as we get throughout the day today. This afternoon sitting around 13 degrees with a very comfortable wind. Great for getting out and getting some fresh air as we head into the afternoon. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, including the chance of some snow in parts of southern Ontario. But right now, back to Michelle and Nathan.
Thanks, Jess. Well, the federal election is 2 weeks from today, with the federal leaders making more promises to voters.
Pierre Poilievre was in Montreal this morning, vowing to use the notwithstanding clause to implement some of his crime agenda.
I am here today to defend the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, particularly for law-abiding Canadians and victims of crime. The Liberals have systematically violated the Charter rights of Canadians to life, liberty, and security of the person, as defined in Section 7. By allowing repeat murderers back out on the street, Liberals are violating the rights of law-abiding people to live in peace and security. By allowing rampant offenders with 200 or 300 convictions to be released within hours of their most recent arrest, Liberals are violating the constitutional rights of the next victim that those criminals will target.
Poilievre says if elected, he would reverse the Supreme Court decision that found it was unconstitutional to sentence people to consecutive life sentences. Liberal leader Mark Carney was also in Montreal, pledging to overhaul defense procurement.
The threats to our sovereignty are multiplying. And in response, we have to give our armed forces the new resources that they need to defend our sovereignty with a made-in-Canada defense procurement approach that will help our defense businesses to grow here at home.
Carney says he would modernize the rules and create a new defense procurement agency. He also pledged to help the Canadian defense industry grow and diversify its markets through international exports. In Toronto this morning, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh unveiled a plan that includes hiring 35,000 nurses across the country by 2030.
So we want to support nurses. We want to make sure they're properly paid. We also know that agency nursing is causing a big concern in our country. Agency nursing is setting up a two-tier system. And I don't blame nurses for this. These are for-profit companies that are offering higher pay. But why don't we just pay nurses more in the public system? That's what we should be doing. And so we've seen the Manitoba NDP take some really strong steps towards tackling this problem of agency nursing. We want to properly compensate. Nurses should get good pay and good work conditions for the work they're doing.
Singh vowed to encourage provinces to fast-track accreditation for foreign-trained nurses and to tie healthcare funding to improvements in nurse-to-patient ratios and working conditions. Meanwhile, in Quebec City, the leader of the Bloc Québécois was asked this morning which of the federal leaders would be the biggest threat to his province.
Canada will decide who is their prime minister. I'm not interfering in that. I will live with whoever wins, but I hope that we will have the wisdom not to give carte blanche to anybody because anybody seems to justify it. We see what's coming in the coming months, only 1 year maybe, but a majority government is there for 4 years.
The party leaders are looking ahead to Wednesday's televised debate in Montreal. It'll be followed by an English language debate on Thursday.
The latest polling shows a slight gain for the Liberals, but the race for Parliament Hill remains tightly contested. For more on the numbers, we're joined live with CTV's Colton Prail in Ottawa. Colton, what is today's Nanos poll tracker showing us?
And Nathan, that gap 7 points now. The Liberals in that mid-40 territory. But crucially here is we've seen things kind of slow down a little bit. The last week or so, they've been about 5 or 6 points above the Conservatives. When you take a look at the preferred prime ministerial polling, it's a similar story where the numbers have been relatively steady. But again, we're seeing the Liberals edge up that lead. Or in this case, it's Mark Carney edge up his lead just shy of 50%, a 16-point gap over Pierre Poilievre. But what's really interesting is the story that this begins to tell, especially when you compare these two parties. And the Conservatives, it's very clear that Pierre Poilievre himself isn't driving the support. It's a sentiment, it's a desire for change. They like the man, but they like the party more. It's a very different story for the Liberals. And going into the French debates and the English debates, potential obstacles for Mr. Carney, that sets the stage for some stumbles. Nick Nanos, the pollster who does these numbers, spoke about that. Have a listen to his perspective on the roadblock that this debate could pose for Mr. Carney.
You can see, Mark Carney polling ahead of his party. It's not about what the Liberals did. It's not about Liberal popularity. It's not about the Liberal Party. It's actually about Mark Carney. That's why the French and English debates are going to be real pressure cookers for him, because Liberal fortunes are directly connected to his political fortunes.
And so this is an interesting opportunity for Mr. Carney, where if he does succeed, he's able to cement himself in a solid position going forward for the next week and a half or so that would be left of the campaign. But if he does stumble, it really could change the dynamics of this race, a race that to this point in time is very geographically divided between East and West, but where there are still opportunities for change. BC is up for grabs. Quebec could absolutely see a ton of shift if there is a Liberal struggle in this French debate, if it opens up an opportunity for the Bloc Québécois to come back into play here. Those two provinces, Quebec and BC, could have a major factor on where things go moving forward, and if the numbers do continue to be, relatively similar to what they are, if they shape out the way we're expecting, those two provinces could ultimately be the ones that decide if we're looking at a Liberal minority or a Liberal majority, and that is the biggest question mark that still remains in what is a tight campaign, even as we're seeing some shift in the numbers.
All right, CTV's Colton Prey with the latest on the campaign trail. Thank you.
Anytime.
Well, as Canada increases its focus on Arctic security, the country's northern communities will play a pivotal role.
But as the region's importance grows, voter turnout has shrunk. CTV's Alex Carpa has more on why people in the north are feeling left behind.
It may look like a cold and desolate place, but Churchill in northern Manitoba is a strategic port town. The community of around 800 people is unique, home to the only deep-water seaport in northern Canada that is connected to land by the rest of the country. But the region where Churchill is situated has had a history of low voter turnout during election time. Some are hoping to see better results this year.
I think there's a lot on the table now, and not just in terms of the national picture, but the regional picture as well.
If you want to see change, then you have to be willing to be making the move for the change.
But others in the community don't share the same sentiment.
The promises that have been made in the past that I think are really important that haven't been kept, that doesn't really matter to my vote.
The view of broken promises is something that resonates with others across Churchill's Indigenous community as well. Some residents I spoke to here say they feel neglected and forgotten about, whether it's improving the high cost of living or the lack of action on the town's port and rail.
We don't see much changes in this area as much as we want. Like, there could be a whole lot more than there is now.
Generally, I just feel like people are sort of fed up, and they just feel that it's not going to make any difference.
The riding of Churchill-Kiiwetinoong-Aski in northern Manitoba is the largest riding in the province, but it has less than 48,000 registered voters. In 2021, this riding only had a 36% voter turnout, well below the national average.
The importance of getting out and voting is pretty critical to, building your community, building the region.
Every province and territory saw a decrease in Indigenous voter turnout in 2021. The largest decreases were in Newfoundland and Labrador, the Northwest Territories, and Saskatchewan.
Their vote will ultimately affect their First Nations. It'll affect their communities. It'll affect their families.
Manitoba Southern Chiefs Organization has launched a campaign called Rock the Vote, encouraging Indigenous people in Manitoba and across the country to cast their ballot ahead of the federal election. Alex Carpa, CTV News, Churchill, Manitoba.
European officials are condemning Russia's deadly missile attack on Ukraine, which killed more than 30 people on Sunday. Ukrainian officials say 2 ballistic missiles hit the city of Sumy, about 30 kilometers from Ukraine's border with Russia, as people gathered to celebrate Palm Sunday. At least 34 people were killed and nearly 120 others were injured. Foreign ministers with the European Union say the attack shows Russia's disregard for Kyiv's agreement to a ceasefire proposed by the U.S. more than a month ago. U.S. President Donald Trump has also condemned the attack.
They made a mistake. I believe it was... Look, you're going to ask them. This is Biden's war. This is not my war. I've been here for a very short period of time. This is a war that was under Biden. He gave him billions and billions of dollars. He should have never allowed, if he had any brain, which he didn't have and doesn't have, and now it's being proven, he wouldn't have allowed that war to start. I would have absolutely not. That war would never have taken place. But remember this is Biden's war. I'm just trying to get it stopped so that we can save a lot of lives. They happen to be Ukrainian and Russian lives. But all I want to do is get it stopped.
The European Union has imposed 16 rounds of sanctions on Russia. Now there are calls for tougher measures aimed at preventing the country from funding its war effort. However, some countries have expressed concern the move would also impact European economies.
Pop star Katy Perry was part of an all-female crew that blasted off into space this morning.
Liftoff. New Shepard has cleared the tower.
In addition to Perry, the crew included journalist Lauren Sanchez and Gail King, former NASA rocket scientist Aisha Bowe, civil rights activist Amanda Nguyen, and film producer Carrie Ann Flynn. Blue Origin says this mission was the first all-female space flight since a Soviet cosmonaut became the first woman to travel in space in 1963.
And all 3 parachutes reefing, and they will slowly inflate.
The flight traveled more than 100 kilometers above the Earth's surface before making a soft landing about 10 minutes after takeoff. The flight took the crew above the Kármán line, which is the internationally recognized boundary of space. Jess?
Well, after a sunny Sunday, the temperatures are still holding on above seasonal, but we've lost a little sunshine thanks to a system right now sitting in northern Ontario set to make its way towards us as we head in towards the day tomorrow. But for now, mostly cloudy as we head into our afternoon. We'll see a daytime high of 13, so just above that seasonal point. And the sunset time now, 8 p.m. Lots of daylight to enjoy. We're holding on at a seasonal point to start the week, but there's messy weather on the way that will cool things down. Coming up, your full forecast.
Well, let me tell you a little story. Yesterday was so beautiful. Opened the sunroof in the car for the first time.
Yes.
My daughter and I were loving it cruising. This morning we woke up, wondered why the car was soaked. We forgot to close it.
Oh, no.
Because you're just not used to opening it and closing it. And yeah, so we had to kind of towel off the ride today.
Too bad.
Oops.
And the interior as well?
The interior got a nice little soaking, yeah.
Goodness. You know, but it was a nice day. I did see people with the tops down and with the shorts on. It was a great day. And today, pretty good start also.
I'll take it. After last week, the roller coaster of emotions with the forecast, we get a nice start this week. It is a little bit drizzly out there. We had some rain early on this morning. That's thanks to a system in northern Ontario that is going to bring snow to parts of southern Ontario. For the GTA, it's day in as rain, but this is a heads up to close your sunroof now.
Yes.
Weather is brought to you by the Presser Law Firm. Injury lawyers, you don't pay unless they win. Now, we saw a beautiful sunrise this morning, but this is also indicative of some of that messier weather. We see these really beautiful colors in the morning. That's just more particulate matter in the air because we do have a system in northern Ontario that is bringing a mess for our friends up there. For us here in southern Ontario, falling more as rain as we get into the day tomorrow. But a temperature that's not too bad to get things started. We're sitting at 11 degrees right now. It is 18 for our friends in Windsor, 14 in Ottawa. Anywhere kind of north of Sault Ste. Marie, it's a little cooler, but they're experiencing that system that's kind of cooling things down right now. Heading into the afternoon, we'll sit just above that seasonal mark, a really moderate southeasterly wind, but that picks up as we head into the evening as we prepare for the rain as we head into the day tomorrow. This evening, though, we hold on to that kind of seasonal temp just above as we head in towards the evening, and that's the same for almost everybody thanks to that really warm southwesterly wind. This is the system that's bringing some snow for some, rain for others. It will make its way across northern Ontario, and as it rotates counterclockwise, it will kind of follow along that blue dotted line there, that trough, and that's what's pushing a little bit of wet snow along the eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, so a little bit of lake effect snow, and then for us, falling mostly as rain. But for today, it's honestly not that bad. A little cloud cover, a few peaks of sun here and there. As we head in towards the evening, again, a fairly clear start to our night, and then it's as we get into the early morning hours tomorrow that we see this system push its way across. Again, bringing some snow or wet snow along those eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. For the GTA, falling more as a scattered shower late morning. So your morning commute in the Greater Toronto area, not too bad. As we head in towards the afternoon, again, the wet flurries kind of push their way in towards areas today through Waterloo region. But for the downtown core of the GTA, we stay mostly just cloudy. So it's not a terrible day. And the snow really is kind of parking itself in those communities that typically see lake effect flurry activity. As we head in towards our Wednesday, though, we hit that middle of the week. We get a little bit of a clearing, and it's going to be quite beautiful as we head through the rest of this week. Again, temperature-wise today, we're pretty spot on for that seasonal point. It does cool down a little as that rain makes its way through. We hold on to the cooler temps as we get through our Wednesday, but still, it's relatively dry. The sunshine comes back just in time for Thursday. Good Friday, a few showers do roll through with another system on the way, but overall, it's very seasonal as we head in towards the Easter weekend. Nathan, I'll send things back over to you.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks.
The Raptors held their season-ending news conference today following the final game yesterday. Scotty Barnes offered his thoughts on the campaign.
Being with these guys every single day this season and seeing the progress that we made each and every single game, seeing people get better day in, day out, seeing how close we are, it just makes me super excited. I think if you seen my face last year throughout this time, I don't think I was probably looking the right way. But, you know, I'm pretty excited for what this team holds and what we're going to grow into.
He's got a great awareness of where the other four guys are. You can put him in actions like that.
Oh, Mobo! The Raptors took on the Spurs in the final game of the season yesterday afternoon. The team ended up losing the game 125-118. The Raptors finished with a record of 30-52, finishing in 11th place in the NBA's Eastern Conference and missing out on the playoffs.
And how about the Masters? Rory McIlroy is finally a champion.
The long journey is over. McIlroy has his masterpiece.
The golfer from Northern Ireland won his first green jacket following a playoff against England's Justin Rose. The win means McIlroy has completed a career Grand Slam, having won every major golf tournament at least once. Canadian Corey Connors was in contention, tying for 8th ultimately.
Still to come, childhood obesity guidelines are being updated for the first time in 20 years. We'll have more on the changes when we come back.
As we touched on earlier in the newscast, 6 women, including Katy Perry and Gayle King, blasted off on a private space flight with Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin.
And for more, we're joined by CTV's science and tech specialist, Dan Riskin. So, Dan, do you consider this a milestone, or is this a publicity stunt?
Well, I mean, it's supposed to, I think, be this milestone because it's 6 women and it's an all-female crew. But this is a crew where you don't touch any buttons. They're not actually piloting this thing. They're mostly just passengers. So it's a little bit of a bittersweet, I would say. You'd like to see an all-female crew that's doing something a little bit more substantial, but nonetheless, I think it's really exciting to see where space tourism has gotten to, and I'm sure this is going to be a topic of conversation for a lot of people. And for Blue Origin, they just want to make sure they're in the conversation, and everybody doesn't just think SpaceX is the only ride in town.
Do you think this might pave the way for other types of flights?
I mean, I would hope so. I mean, what I'd like to see is the price coming down, because right now this is out of reach for the rest of us, for us muggles. It's only the super wealthy or the connected to the super wealthy that get to do these things. But it is a pretty cool idea to spend 11 minutes going all the way up past what's called the Kármán line, 100 kilometers above the Earth, get to see the curvature of the Earth, and then come back down and tell your friends about it. I think that's a ride I'd sign up for in a second if I could afford it.
And not everybody can say they've been to space.
Right.
Let's talk about another study. This has to do with liars. What was studied about liars?
This is a neat study. The question is, when somebody lies to you once, can you trust them after that, or are they always going to be a liar? Like, are people just built that way and they never change? There's a study where they tracked people over 3 years, and they gave them multiple different experiments where they were looking to see if they would be honest or if they would tell a little fib. And the way they do this is you sit down at a desk and they say, write a number on a piece of paper, and you write the number on a piece of paper, and they say, we can't see it, we're in a different place, but now I'm going to show you a number, tell me if it matches the number you have, and you get $5. And so you're like, yeah, it totally does, right? And then you get the $5, but they can't tell in that moment if you lied, but if they do it multiple times, they can see on average if you're making more money than you should be randomly. And so in this way, they were able to track people over time. And the basic take home is, once a liar, not always a liar, but much more likely to be a liar down the road. So if you have somebody in your life that's lied to you before, think twice before you trust them the next time, because it seems to be something that lasts at least 3 years that they showed in this study.
Good advice. So another study shows that parents who are maybe nervous about math might be holding their kids back academically.
Yeah, this is a really interesting study. I mean, a lot of people have math anxiety, right? Math comes up and you're just like, I don't want to do that. And so the question is, how does that impact the kids? Do the kids get math anxiety if their parents have math anxiety? Fortunately, this study did not find that. They had kids between the ages of 3 and 8. They measured the math anxiety of the parents, and then they looked at the math anxiety and math performance of the kids. And they didn't find a correlation between the anxiety of the kids and the anxiety of the parents, which is good, but they did find that anxious parents who are anxious about math, their kids tend to enter school with worse numeracy skills than the kids whose parents love math. And so they are picking something up. And when you start school with worse math skills, it tends to sort of follow you as you go through. These kids were just held back a little bit in terms of their development because of this slow start. So the real take home here is if you've got a kid and you're talking around math, find that part of you that does have enthusiasm for it. Because if you think it's harmless for you to say, oh, I'm not a math person, I'll just, no, that's not for me. It does have an impact on how kids learn their math skills.
Wow. Were your parents good in math?
Yeah, my parents were pretty confident academically all around. And so it paid off for me. And listen, I had my struggles with math for sure, but it's all about sort of saying, I can see where math is fun. And here's a YouTube video that's kind of entertaining. And, maybe there are parts of math I don't love, but I just don't have to talk about that in front of the kids.
So helpful. And just a little tweak there. Yeah, CTV's science and tech specialist Dan Riskin, great to have you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Well, the guidelines for treating childhood obesity are getting their first update in nearly 20 years. The new clinical practice guidelines published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal were developed by Obesity Canada. They're the result of a 4-year process involving patients who'd lived with obesity, as well as pediatric and other healthcare providers. The authors list 10 clinical recommendations and 9 good practice statements, which emphasize the value of a family-centered care model. They also suggest obesity management be based on health outcomes and lowering the priority on appearance-based goals.
A trial in the landmark antitrust case against Meta begins in Washington today. The U.S. Competition and Consumer Watchdog alleges Meta, which already owned Facebook, bought Instagram in 2012 and WhatsApp in 2014 in an effort to eliminate competition. The Federal Trade Commission reviewed and approved those acquisitions, but also committed to monitor the outcomes. If the FTC wins the case, it could force Meta to sell both Instagram and WhatsApp.
Still to come, Canadian inflation data will be released tomorrow. We'll have more on what economists are saying about the numbers when we come back.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
One of the big stories today is that all-female Blue Origin crew and their big trip to space this morning. For more on the online reaction, we're joined live by Sam East, host with 99.9 Virgin Radio, for our regular Monday segment, Chronically Online. Sam, great to have you with us once again. Can you imagine, what did you do on this Monday? Oh, just went to space and came back. How are people responding to their trip?
Of course, this is the biggest story online right now. The all-female crew, we've been talking about it not just today, but in the weeks and months leading up to it. Gayle King, of course, one of the notable people on this journey, along with Katy Perry. She had some insight for us on something that Katy Perry did while in space.
The best part was when we got back in our seats after 0 G's, Katie sang, "What a Wonderful World."
She did?
Isn't that nice?
Oh, come on.
She sang, "What a wonderful world. I see dreams." Oh, yes.
Oh.
Because we'd been asking her to sing all the time, and she wouldn't. And then, because everybody said, sing roar, sing fireworks. And she said, it's not about me. I wanted to talk about the world.
So there was some speculation leading up to this on whether or not Katy Perry would be singing while they were on this monumental trip. But, she didn't sing one of the hits from her catalog. There is footage of her, when she finally hit ground where she's kissing the earth. Yeah, we see that here. There's Gayle King, victorious after their monumental journey. Their reaction is getting kind of scrutinized online now at this point. There's a lot of roasting going on at this point. Some tweets saying Katy Perry casually exiting a spaceship like it's a red carpet event. She's acting like she was in space long enough to miss the Earth. That's it. Even flights are longer. So in as much as this is, a piece of history, this all-female crew, the internet takes no mercy on this. Very quick to roast. Very quick.
A lot of haters going to hate. A lot of haters. But, pretty cool what they did. And it's good that she sang, because you could say she made some more history now. First, private concert in space by a pop star, maybe?
I think so. And maybe it could be setting the trend for different artists to come. Maybe there will be, live streams of concerts in space. I feel like this is the trajectory that we could be going down.
You never know. Okay, talking about concerts, Coachella was on this past weekend, the first weekend, and a surprise guest is generating some buzz online, but they're not a musician. What can you tell us?
We had, Lady Gaga, Charlie XCX brought out Billie Eilish, some of the biggest names in music. But ahead of Clairo, an artist that was set to perform at Coachella. And by the way, this is one of the biggest music festivals in the entire world. Ahead of Clairo, a politician came on stage.
And the future of what happens to America is dependent upon your generation. Now, you can turn away and you can ignore what goes on, but if you do that, you do it at your own peril. We need you to stand up to fight for justice. Fight for economic justice, social justice, and racial justice.
Well, that is indeed Bernie Sanders. I think, you know, considering the crowd at Coachella Music Festival, it skews a lot younger. You're in the crowd. Picture this. You're partying. You're seeing your favorite artist. And then all of a sudden, 83-year-old Bernie Sanders appears on stage with a political message. So needless to say, people were surprised. This was not on the bill. He was not on the lineup. And the reaction, of course, is fast and furious. Tons of viral moments, clips of this, including some reaction that we're seeing here. He knew exactly where young people were and went there. When an 83-year-old politician shows up at Coachella to speak out, you know we have a major problem. At Coachella, this man is working overtime. So, I mean, it was a political move. Bernie Sanders definitely known for being extremely outspoken, but he knew what he was doing here. It was very strategic.
Fair to say it was widely well received?
Well, depending on a political stance, of course, but it seems like the reaction online is leading to praise. Whether or not they agree with his policy, they agree with his values. They saw the value in showing up to an event like Coachella at 83 years old and using the moment to make a statement.
He should have sang a little something.
Right? That was a moment. He could have shown off a hidden talent.
Sam, thanks so much. And remember, everybody, you can hear her at 99.9 Virgin Radio weekdays from 2 to 5. Have a great show today.
Thank you, Michelle.
Economists expect another elevated inflation reading in Canada this week. Some economists expect the annual inflation rate to come in at 2.6% for March when data is released tomorrow. That would match February's inflation level. Experts say food prices are helping to push overall inflation, while real estate trends are helping to relieve some of the pressure. Economists say tariffs will also have an impact on inflation, but Canada's retaliatory measure is being offset by lower commodity prices. Meanwhile, the Bank of Canada is set to make its next interest rate decision on Wednesday. A small town in Alberta is struggling after losing its only grocery store.
The population, made up of largely seniors, now have to travel to neighboring communities to get food. CTV's Kathy Lee has their story.
In the small town of Bowden, Alberta, this grocery store is now a hollow shell.
It's been like a ghost town.
A contrast to the vibrant gathering spot it once was not long ago.
The school kids used to go down there at noon and get stuff to eat.
People in town relied on the former Ready Mart for groceries. It was the only one here and operated for decades. But after the building owners didn't renew the lease and couldn't find a buyer, the doors were shuttered. Now, for people in Bowden who want to get groceries, they have to hop on this major highway and drive 15 minutes to the next community. It's a challenge for many seniors here.
I'm vision impaired and I can't see properly to drive.
Wendy Thompson relies on friends for help, but even for others who can drive, it's not ideal.
I'm driving back and forth about 2 to 3 times a week, and that's about a 40-kilometer drive back there and back. It's very expensive driving back and forth.
The town says a shuttle bus was canceled due to lack of demand, and other affordable transportation options aren't available.
There is a taxi, which is very expensive, but there isn't any way of having groceries delivered to this town.
Multiple attempts to get another company to open a grocery store have failed.
They did the market analysis and just said it would be too much of an investment on the return that they would get.
Which means people here have to keep traveling elsewhere.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
To get their necessities. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Bowden, Alberta.
Coming up on CTV News at noon, a Minecraft movie continues to reign supreme at the box office. We'll have more on the success of this video game adaptation when we return.
A Minecraft movie is now the top-grossing film of 2025 so far.
In the overworld, wow, anything you can dream about, you can create.
The family movie held on to the top spot with more than $80 million U.S. in its second weekend for a total of $281 million in ticket sales. Animated biblical film The King of Kings debuted with $19.1 million across North America. And The Amateur, starring Oscar winner Rami Malek, claimed third place with $15 million. That Minecraft movie I haven't seen, but apparently it's pretty good.
My kiddies love it. They actually wanted to go see it yesterday, and I said, it's too nice outside. And we've already seen it.
It was such a beautiful day. We've been waiting for a Sunday like that, or a day like that in general, and it was beautiful to wrap up the weekend. We do have a really nice day on tap today, just not the same brilliant sunshine, but we are getting there when it comes to our spring weather. We saw a line of showers roll through early on this morning that since pushed its way into eastern Ontario, but that system in northern Ontario, as it rotates back around into the day tomorrow, set to bring some showers. But dry for now. We'll see a few peaks of sunshine sitting at 11 degrees, warm through Windsor at 18, Niagara sitting at 17, and everybody holding on to this warmth thanks to a more southerly flow to the winds. We do take a bit of a dip as that rain comes through tomorrow. We'll see a bit of a cool down, dropping down below seasonal, but it's short-lived, and we do that kind of slow but steady climb back towards the double digits. So your Tuesday, your Wednesday, are they the worst? No, but it is a little bit cooler. But we are keeping our eye on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as we head into what is going to be a busy Easter weekend.
All right. Thank you, Jess. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and the whole team here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great afternoon.